my lovely friends, this is Margaret. We are continuing what is an annual tradition for this series, and that is doing a Taylor Swift tag by starshinebrite. I will link her blog down below along with the tag that she came up with. She is one of my friends from Twitter, and she is a Taylor Swift fan, much like I am. And so when Midnights came out, she went ahead and made a Midnights tag, and then she promptly had to create a second tag, or second part of the tag, because Taylor released the 3 a.m. edition. This is why I wait until the next morning. This is why I do it at 8 a.m. instead of midnight. So anyways, I'm doing her tag. I am trying primarily to keep with books that I read this year and wanted to talk about. I tried not to do anything that I read like previously, unless it was like something that there could be no other answer, like the answer for the first one. So starting out with the first track, Lavender Haze, you're supposed to talk about a book that you will always love and defend. For me, that is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. This is, there are a couple of reasons why this gets more defense, primarily because it is a middle grade, and I feel that as a middle grade, people tend to discount how well written it is. With middle grade in general, people tend to kind of dismiss the quality and the skill needed to write a middle grade book, but especially for this one, because I love Percy Jackson. It is my entire personality 90% of the time when I'm not personally being something else. You know, I love this book. If you have not read it, you should. There are a lot of videos on my channel about it. Just Google the word nerd. Not Google, YouTube search. Just go into YouTube search, type in Percy Jackson and my channel name, and there will be like 6 videos that will come up if you want more of my thoughts on this one. Number 2 is Maroon, a spicy book. We are going to talk about one of my favorite spicy books, and that is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is about Stella. She is autistic, and she is not that great at the sex part of relationships, so she ends up, after breaking up with her most recent boyfriend, or being broken up with, she ends up hiring a male escort to help her get better, because she thinks what she needs is practice. Stella is a very analytical spreadsheet type of person. I loved this. I loved like the growth that we see Stella go through and her getting more comfortable, being vulnerable and more comfortable with her body, and I really appreciate that. The next one is Anti-Hero, and that is a book with an unreliable narrator. I am going to be talking about My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. In this, we are following Jade, a young native teen. I'll be talking more about it in my wrap-up and give you like more of my thoughts, but what I want to talk about this is one of my favorite things, where you have a character who is unreliable, not because they're trying to mislead the audience, but because they so thoroughly believe their interpretation of things, and yet as the audience you are able to see a whole other side of what is going on. We see primarily in Jade's point of view, so you don't have a lot of the audience being like, oh my god, something's coming, like that anxiety when you know something bad is coming, like you've got details on it that the main character doesn't have. I know that can be frustrating for people. This one, it is purely going on Jade's speculation, and you as the audience are sitting here going, okay, I see why you think this, Jade, but looking at this as a whole, I think this might be what's actually happening. And you do go back and forth a little bit, just the way that he was able to do that and also integrate the slasher genre into this plot, into Jade's character arc, into her, like, what's going on in the world building, all of that. I absolutely adored that, because I'm not a slasher person. I've never seen one in my life, and yet I didn't feel like I needed to read this book. That's one of the things that I like to point out, because people may think that you need to have read some of these books or watched some of these movies to read this book, and you don't. Number 4 is Snow on the Beach, an unexpected surprise. I am going to go with the one that surprised me the most last year, I guess, at this point, and that is White Cat by Holly Black. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this is not Holly Black's best book. I'm just like, it's something I grabbed because I was interested in her writing. I also have her fairy series up there, the one that comes before the Folk of the Air series. It's not her best book. It's very 2012 YA. And yet the way that she was able to take the plot and absolutely turn it upside down and reevaluate everything that I thought was going to happen just with changing one little detail. I just really appreciate it. I was not expecting to be surprised the way I was with this book. I was expecting it to be very very mediocre, and I guess maybe it was, but at the same time, the way she was able to do that, I really appreciated. Number 5 is You're on Your Own Kid, a character that really needs a hug. I'm gonna go with Vanya from Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Vanya just wants to be loved. She just wants love and acceptance, and for her parents not to make their relationship transactional. And does she get any of that? You'd have to read the book to find out. But she definitely does not get a hug from them. But she needs one. She definitely needs a hug. This child needs a hug, and also lots of therapy. I have an entire video coming out where I'm going to be ranting about this. It is, spoiler alert, going to make my best books of the year. If you want more of my thoughts, there's a wrap up, and then there's that video coming up. And if you're interested in that, you can always hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. you know. Number 6 is Midnight Rain, and that is a book with star-crossed lovers. I had to go with Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, and I can't tell you much more than that because I will give away massive spoilers for book 1 if I tell you who the couple is. I was surprised as well. They have some issues to get through in this book. They have some stuff to work through, but at the same time, I love them. And the way this book ends, somehow they managed to be even more star-crossed than they were when the book started. Number 7 is Question, which is to talk about a grumpy sunshine relationship. It's not gonna be the relationship that you think it is. Both of the people in the ship are kind of grumpy. They're both very traumatized. They're both having issues. But there is a relationship that is like, it is the definition, the dictionary definition of grumpy sunshine. Altair and Nasir are just this fantastic, beautiful, bantery, like, just so much fun to watch them interact. It is fantastic in this book. It gets better in the second book. I would have pulled the second book out, but I didn't want to have to put both of them away because it's one of these on my bookshelf, and it's already hard enough to get the one book out without destroying the rest of the shelf. So I just left that one there so I have fewer books to put away. Although I probably would have had to do the same amount of work. Number 8 is A Vigilante Shit. Favorite character out for revenge. I'm going to tell you a book, but I'm going to tell you that it's not the character that you think it is. And that is Batman Dark Victory by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sowell. This is the follow-up to Long Halloween. And in it, we have Batman, who obviously is always out for revenge. It's like the driving thing behind his personality. But also, we have little baby Dick Grayson, who starts this thinking that he wants revenge on the people who killed his parents. And Bruce having to confront a lot of things within himself because he's looking at this tiny, small child that is super angry at everything and at the world and going, ooh, maybe we don't want history to repeat itself. Like, it's a lot of both Bruce and Alfred going, oh, this is a very small, angry child. He needs therapy. It's adorable. I love it. It is a fantastic follow-up to the Long Halloween, and it's even more emotional. And that's what I'm going to say. If you're into Batman, read this. Number 9 is Bejeweled, a book with strong character development. I am probably going to surprise people with this because I think the last time people saw me talk about this book, I wasn't particularly impressed with it, but it ended up ending, and I was impressed with it, and that is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. This isn't a romance. I think it's like sold as a romance, probably mostly because that's what's going to get more people will buy it that way. It's romantic, but it is not a romance. The thing that I love about this is that it is such a wonderful exploration of grief because we are following Lydia after the death of her fiance, and she gets the chance to kind of see what their life would have been like if he had not died, but we're also seeing her confront moving on in her real life. And I really liked the way that this was handled. I liked the kind of secondary, almost second chance relationship that comes up in this, and I just, it's fantastic for all of those reasons. I don't think the actual love interest is in it enough for it to be classified as a romance because he's like a B plot, and the A plot is this woman with her dead fiance. I really appreciated it, and I thought it did a really good job of exploring and working through grief. Number 10 is Labyrinth, and that is a book with a second chance romance. I have to kind of go with the OG, my favorite, the only really one that I could think of, but that's the Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. This is about a couple where he finds out that she has been faking some things to kind of help his ego, and she kind of decides she's had enough doing that. And so there kind of breaks their marriage apart, and it's about him trying to go, okay, so how do I come back in and make sure that I am fulfilling my wife and that I am seeing her as a person? He's kind of like backpedaling real hard to kind of try and he doesn't want the marriage to end. He's trying to fix it, and he ends up getting caught up in this book club where these guys read romance novels in order to figure out how to better please their wives, partners, girlfriends, etc. Number 10 is Karma. What is your favorite full circle moment? I can't tell you what it is, but it is in the Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. It's the very, very last scene, and it was so good, it almost made me cry. And it is literally full circle, well, almost, literally full circle from the first scene that we see in the prologue and then this final scene that we see in the epilogue, and it is wonderful, and I love it, and it's very hard to make me get this emotional, but of course it was a horse book that did it. Number 12 is Sweet Nothing, and that is your favorite fluffy, cozy read. I'm going to go with the Kaiju Preservation Society. This doesn't sound like it is going to be a cozy, kind of fluffy read, because we're dealing with kaiju. We're dealing with a dude in New York during a pandemic, and yet, they are Godzilla with the self-preservation instincts of a panda. That's what they are. It was delightful. It was wonderful watching all the interactions with the different crew that are in this book and the main character, and it just, like, it gets a little dark at places, like at the end, but for the most part, this just stays fun and happy. The author describes this as like a pop song versus a ballad, and so I really enjoyed it. Number 13 is perfect world building and storytelling, and I have to go with the Expanse series. I can't think of a single science fiction series that does everything this does as well as this does it. This is one of those that you sit down and you go, how do I learn to write like this? How do I learn to be able to take my plot from here to book 9, not have it get boring, not have it be repetitive, but also still have it dealing with the same initial problem that sets off book 1? It's one of those, like you don't think it. You do not think it is going to be that way in any of the books. You start reading the book and you're like, yeah, this probably is not connected. This is just a fun space story. And then you're like, ah, crap. It all goes back to the... Of course it does. So, anyways, I love this series. I've talked about it nonstop. I will be talking about it more in some videos coming up, and it's just so fantastic. The way that this world building is integrated into the plot, into the character, the way that it kind of is, it's not, I don't know if it's under the radar, but you don't even know they are telling you about the world most of the time when they are telling you about their world. You're spending most of the book going, oh my god, everyone's gonna die, everything's gonna go terrible, how are they gonna fix this? And the entire time they are telling you all about this really complex and interesting futuristic society. Number 14 is The Great War, and that is love that rises even above the hardest times. I am going to go with Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This main relationship in this does hit some hard times. It hits a plague, it hits someone being cursed. Well, I mean, she's cursed at the beginning, but then she gets more cursed. It hits Regency, London, society, like all of those things. And yet, just watching this couple kind of come to know each other and fall in love with each other over the course of the weeks that after they've met, I had so much fun reading this. Didn't quite make my favorite books of the year, but that's because I only did 10 books, and there were so many good books that I read in the latter half of the year. It was very hard to choose. I highly recommend this if you like fairy tales or fairy stories and Regency romance, that kind of stuff. Number 15 is Bigger Than the Whole Sky, and that is to read a book that deals with grief. I am going to recommend an older book that I don't think I see enough people like talking about and getting a chance to read, and that is The Boy in the Black Suit by Jason Reynolds. This is about a young man who loses his mother, and in coping with that, he starts hanging out at other people's funerals, and that leads to him also having a job at a funeral home. This was just a very good book. It is a fantastic exploration of family and grief. If those are themes that interest you, I highly suggest that you pick up this book and read it. It is wonderful. Number 16 is Paris, and that is your favorite escape. I think we can figure out from here that my favorite escape is fantasy with a little bit of romance. Well, any amount of romance in fantasy I adore. But I really like fantasies where like there is a strong romance B plot. They just make me so happy, and they're lovely, and I enjoy reading them, and yeah. That's all there is to say about that. Number 17 is High Infidelity, and that is a book with a love triangle. I am going to go with The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. There are multiple love triangles that this could be referring to, so I'm not going to say which one it is, but I really liked how some of the dynamics are going in this book, and I'm very excited for book 2 to see how they further progress and cause more messes. I ended up talking a lot about this in my Dark Academia vlog, so I will link you to that up there if you want more information about it, but I really enjoyed this book, and I had so much fun. It is a slower moving plot, I will tell you that. It's a lot about vibes, it's a lot about just kind of characters futzing around and doing stuff, and a lot of it doesn't make sense until you get to the end. But like, just having read this, I can tell that Olivia Blake is being very intentional in what she is building up for what is going to happen in the second book. Number 18 is a friends to lovers romance, and I had to go with that's upside down. I had to go with Anne of Manhattan by Brina Starler. This was just a fun read. It's an Anne of Green Gables retelling. Well, actually, it's an Anne of Avonlea retelling, because this is going through Anne's college years as she is working in the final year of her master's program, and then Gilbert Blythe transfers into her little secluded New York college, and she's like, what the heck, my dude? Like, I thought I'd seen the last of you when you went to California for college, but now you're back. I enjoyed this thoroughly. It was just a fun kind of little retelling of Anne of Green Gables. It wasn't perfect. There are some things that I would like to have seen adapted a little bit different. Anyways, this was good. Number 19 is Would've, Could've, Should've, a book you wish had a different ending / DNF'd. I didn't DNF this. I thought about DNFing it, but I was supposed to be able to discuss it, and I knew if I tried to talk about my issues with it without having finished the book, everyone would tell me that my opinion of the book was invalid because I hadn't finished the book. I mean, they're still going to tell me that because I haven't finished the entire, like, saga of series that are involved. But if a book has issues, having those issues fixed in later books does not fix the issues in that book. And that book is Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. I won't say much about this because I have an entire rant about it on the wrap-up that I did. You can go check that out if you are interested to see my full thoughts, but there are a lot of spoilers in there because there was no way for me to discuss my problems with the book without spoiling it. I was not happy with the way it felt like she left one of the plot lines, just kind of forgot about it and was like, oh, I need to wrap this up real quick at the end of the book. Like, it didn't make sense with what the character's journey had been for the first 2.5 books. So I was not happy with it, and I wish I had, like, I don't know that I wish I hadn't read it, but like, there was so much rage in that last like 25% when I finally figured out what was happening and how things were going to end, and then it ended worse than I thought it was going to end. And most of my issue, not all of it, because there is some stuff that happens in the plot that I was like, this is completely and totally unnecessary, and why do we do this? Because it affects nothing about what happens through the rest of the book. But my biggest issue is that, like, I can tell from the other storylines in this novel, she has the skill to have gotten this particular storyline to a place where the audience, the reader, is feeling like, yes, the character has changed her mind. She does feel like she's in a better place. She does feel like, you know, like get you there, and she doesn't. She puts no effort into getting the audience to the same place that the character ends up. And most of the people I feel that end up there just don't like that character because they think that she is at fault for everything. So okay, whatever. And then finally, number 20 is Dear Reader, a book that taught you something important. I am going to talk about 2 books that I read, and they are nonfiction picks. The first one is Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot, by Mickey Kendall. This is a very, very, very good look at racism and anti-blackness throughout the last several decades and how it is affecting women today. And it's a very, like, close look at what feminism is and what are we trying to do with feminism and how are you defining it? Because if your feminism is not interested in meeting people's needs, the rest of it really doesn't matter. It's kind of like the argument that she puts forth in this book. The other one is more focused on history, which is why I wanted to do 2 separate books, but that is The Rape of Nanking by Irish Chang. This is about the atrocities that happened during the Sino-Japanese War, specifically when the Japanese soldiers made their way to the city of Nanking and basically turned it into a war zone. So it's a hard book to read, but it is also very, very good because it makes you sit down and think about where these tactics came from. The through line between the tactics that the United States and England and some of the other European countries used in the Far East, in Japan, in China, Korea, all of that, and the where we end up with the Japanese military using those same tactics, it's very, very apparent there. I highly recommend it if you are able to read it. It has some pretty graphic descriptions of violence, sexual assault, some of that stuff, because she goes into what happened to really give you the full picture of how awful it was. And that's a weird point to leave off on, but that's the Midnight's book tag. This is part of my kind of end of the year series that I do, the 12 Days of Margaret. You'll have figured out that it is not happening in 12 days by this point in the year, but I'm still doing all 12 videos that I had planned. So if you're interested in more of my kind of end of the year wrap up content, I'll have whatever is most recent right here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. That is it for now, my friends, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!